Hello, I'm Emma of Granola Gear, and I thought today would be the perfect day to do a little knit and chat. Well, it's beautiful and sunny coming in my windows, but cold outside. So I have nice lighting, and I just finished the yoke of my Eva cardigan. Doesn't really look like a whole lot right now that I'm knitting for my mom. Um, it was definitely a long yoke. There's a lot of ease with the cardigan, which I didn't really realize. Plus, it's a cardigan, so you're doing purling rows and knitting rows. So I'm finally on the body, so I don't have any increases or anything, which is nice. And I thought I just crank along on it for a little while while I chat. Um, I like to finish. I like to, when I start the body, finish the ball that I'm working on, which this actually is quite a bit, and then I move on to the sleeves so I can do a little knitting in the round and get myself a little closer to being finished up. Um, yeah, but I thought it would be nice to maybe do some general knitting plans talks because I have some ideas for what I want to do. I have plans for a lot of the yarn that I currently have. Um, yeah, and that kind of thing. My kind of final winter thoughts for the year as things sort of start to warm up. But I live in New England, so I'm sure it'll get cold again. But I'm near Boston, so it's coastal, and I doubt we'll get a whole lot of snow. I'm filming this on Valentine's Day, and if you are in New England, you know that we were supposed to have a really big storm. We were supposed to get like a foot of snow, even in the city, and then it rained. So there was no snow. They canceled school and everything for absolutely no reason. It was kind of ridiculous. I was pretty sad because I always look forward to the snow, but it is what it is. But yeah, so I'm excited to be here working on this. Um, I've been thinking a lot about, well, last year I was living in Los Angeles over the winter. Um, for a year I was living in LA, or 10 months or whatever, and then 2 months in San Diego, but that's beside the point. I was living in a warmer climate, which I had never really done before. I grew up in Maine, so pretty far northeast US, cold, chilly, lots of sweaters and fleeces all the time, all winter. To Southern California was quite the change. I still got to wear sweaters, but last year was the first year that I was really uh, uh, not competent, but like fast enough, I guess, really, to finish sweaters. So like I knit this Ingrid sweater last winter, and I wore it a couple times, but it was kind of like never really a great time for it. Knitting the backwards loop stitches under the arm now, so I kind of got to look. Uh, but yeah, it was my first real knitting winter, and I didn't really get to wear my knits. So this year was my first knitting winter, I guess, that was cold, and it was quite the experience in a good way. Um, like I said, I grew up in a pretty cold climate, and growing up uh, in school and in life, the solution for cold weather was sweaters, of course, but also fleeces. Like I wore a lot of fleeces, like Patagonia, North Face, LL Bean, like that kind of Polar Tech fleece. Um, that was what we wore. I mean, it was what was trendy too, but like that was generally the solution for being cold, like wearing another fleece under your jacket or just out and about. And I found this year, after getting used to wearing wool all the time, or like wool and alpaca and that kind of thing, I wearing a fleece either did not make me warm enough or made me too warm consistently. But if I put on a sweater like this one, I might need like a heavier one on a colder day to feel really warm. But I was always the perfect temperature. Like I was never too hot, never too cold. I'd want to wear it all day long because I was just comfortable. Um, and I don't know if the feeling of not being warm enough or being too warm in fleece was exaggerated by my experience wearing wool. Like now that I had that feeling, it made the feeling of wearing fleece different. But I just felt it was so interesting growing up in like an outdoorsy cold climate. And I saw a reel talking about it the other day, talking about Gore-Tex and how Gore-Tex changed everything, like the water repellent um, fabric. But it's really interesting where we've gone in like the outdoor and outdoor clothing industry, when all people have been wearing for thousands of years has been animal fibers and animal skins to keep themselves warm, and that's what works in like areas with uh, like higher native populations. I mean, I see reels all the time of uh, native people in Arctic climates wearing seal skin something, or like different furs, coats and boots and mittens, all made of furs and lots of wool, because it is the best way to stay warm. And I think it's so interesting that we've been like marketed away from that to wearing like all polyester clothing to be warm, which is, I mean, it's indicative of the way everything is right now, but it's just, I think it's so funny. Um, and it's really made me take a good look at my wardrobe and what functions for me. Um, I don't know. And it'll be interesting this year because I have knit some summer knits, but I feel like I wasn't quite as invested. I still had sweaters I felt like I wanted to knit. And now that I've got a basis of sweaters and I don't feel like I need to be cranking them out all the time, I feel like I have a little more leeway to work on that stuff, which is why I'm working on gift knits for family. That's also one of my goals this year, is to knit for family, because they all live in cold climates and they'll appreciate it. Um, but yeah, so that's why I'm working on this. I have the next sweater I have in the pipeline is knitting a traditional Norwegian kofta for my little brother. He wears wool sweaters, scratchy wool commercial sweaters that are vintage, and he loves them and he wears them all day long. So I'd say that's someone who's deserving of a nice sweater, because he really wants one too. I think it'll be awesome. I'm going to use a free drops pattern I found that looked nice, and that he liked. So that should be an adventure. I'd like to knit myself one too. I'd like to knit myself a cardigan. For him, I'm going to do a pullover, one of the ones with like the little, it's not a quarter zip, but it's got like an opening with hooks. So that's what I'm going to do for him, and I'll hopefully knit myself a kofta next year. My mom is half Norwegian, so we're a quarter, and that kind of, I think, I joke about wanting to be more involved and learn more about my culture, aka knit more and buy more yarn. When I watch Inga from Knitting Traditions, I'm always very jealous of her knits, and being in Norway, where I some crazy proportion of people knit the Scandinavian countries, as we all know, where so many of the beautiful patterns come from, and amazing yarn. But yeah, so that's kind of been my thoughts lately. As far as knitting plans, I have a couple things in the works. I have one or two things planned. I'm not good at keeping like a written record of my stash or anything like that. I've tried before, but I have a pretty serious mental record, and everything's kind of got a project assigned to it. Not everything, but all my larger quantities. I had mentioned I wanted an anchor shirt because I have cotton that would work for that. I have like paint box DK, but then I was knitting my Elizabeth blouse in paint box DK, and I thought I had enough, but I don't think I do. I just went to go get another skein and there wasn't any. So I hope I don't have to buy more of that because I thrifted it. But I mean, it's inexpensive, so it's not the end of the world. I started that pattern because I thought I had enough. I need to go digging through my yarn because it's not super organized. I really need to come up with a better organization system than just putting it on a shelf. But you know, I don't want to spend money on nice looking baskets or something. So kind of is what it is for right now. Other things I want to knit. Also finished my blouse number 1, except for the ends and stuff. I have a stack of things that need their ends woven in, and I had a decent amount of the cashmere silk blend yarn left. So I think I might knit like an Alice top. The yarn is like an Aran weight, but it's pretty heavy, so I think I could get away with using it as a bulky, because that's supposed to be a bulky. Maybe I could hold something with it, but I kind of think it'll be fine. I'm very I'm very loose when it comes to weights and yarn types. I kind of don't care. Like if I can make it work, I'm going to make it work. I mean, knitting has no rules, right? Like that's my philosophy. I mean, I might follow a pattern to a T sometimes, but overall, knitting has no rules. Like I can do whatever I want. Um I use whatever yarn I want. I mess around with sizes and needles and all sorts of stuff just to make it work, because that's the nice thing about getting better at knitting is you can just mess with stuff so you can make whatever you want. um I think that's awesome. I've written a few patterns, and I don't mind writing patterns, but it's kind of I kind of like the I kind of prefer the creativity of like messing with an existing pattern to making my own. I can do that. It's just the I I found the best way. I'll probably make another one again someday, but it's hard because you've really to design a pattern efficiently, you really have to do all the math ahead of time. You have to really map things out, and that's just not as much fun to sit at the computer and basically write the pattern ahead of time. I'd rather just wing it, but it's a lot harder to wing it first and write it later. Um, but I don't know. I'm evolving always as a knitter. There's always things to come, so we'll see. But yeah, so those are a couple of things: the anchor shirt, the Alice top, whatever it's called. I'll probably knit a few other t-shirts. I don't know. I have a few summer knits, but I kind of don't wear them a ton. I don't know if it's because of I have to like sort of mentally assess if it's because of the yarn I used or if it's the pattern or whatever. I think maybe it's because I used their patterns with heavier weight yarns, and in the summer I obviously don't want to be wearing a ton of fabric. I don't like being sweaty. Uh so we'll see. I might knit some of the thinner tank tops and stuff. But then it can be hard to deal with like whether or not they're kind of see-through. Like I'm wearing a whatchamacallit, a turtleneck under this because I tend to not wear things skin to skin. Not that I can't necessarily, it's just preference for warmth and for comfort. Like I'd rather wear a tank top underneath and be comfortable and maybe have it peek out a little bit than find myself uncomfortable a couple hours in and wish I had worn something. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. I don't know. I think I might just knit a bunch of socks this summer. I knit only one pair of socks in the last year. I'd said in the podcast that I really think I need to do some stockinette socks. I haven't knit many plain stockinette socks. I'm actually wearing my my ruffle socks. I don't know if you can see that, my ruffle socks by Petite Knit. That's one of the closest things I have to a stockinette sock. And those are super cute, but the ruffle kind of takes forever because you have to cast on so many stitches. I haven't knit many. I don't know if I've knit a toe up sock. I have some smaller skeins of yarn, so I might try toe up socks. And I have my tiny scale, so I can perfectly balance out the yarn between socks. So that's another thing I was thinking about. Sorry, the light kind of keeps going up and down. I don't know if you can see the sparklies from all my disco balls. I have like 5. But yeah, I've been thinking about summer knits, but I'm definitely not ready to let go of my winter knits. I already am thinking about what I want for next year. I'd really like to knit a cowl. I almost started one a couple times this winter, but I had so many other stuff going on that I didn't. I walk to work with my husband in the morning, usually about a mile one way and then a mile back. And it is pretty chilly in the wind sometimes. And I'd wear my Sophie shawl as a scarf and like wrap it around my head. But I'd really like a cowl that just fits around my head pretty well and is stiff so it stands up. I was looking at the Spot Cowl by Anne Wenzel. I think that's how you say her name, because it also has like a bit of a dicky they also have, or Petite Knit has a couple of those patterns that like cover a little bit in the front and the back, so it really like tucks into what you're wearing so that you don't get cold under there. my ears and my cheeks just get pretty chilly when I'm walking, and that's the only thing that bothers me. And then the air gets cold in your face, and you just need a little like something to insulate. So that's one thing I've been thinking about knitting. I'm not great about getting to knitting accessories. I started another Sophie shawl last year, and I'm only halfway through it. I haven't finished it. I took it out to work on it again, and then I just haven't because I've got too many things going on. I have I said it wrong in the podcast, but I have the Dahlia sweater by Lynette that I had started and haven't finished. I kept calling it the Delia sweater in that video. So I have the Dahlia sweater I still need to finish. I'm sure I'll get to that at some point. I'm working on my second Monday sweater with the minis, and that's going really well. I did have to unravel it for color coordination reasons and redo it, but that's fine. What else? I have a bunch of unraveled sweater yarn that's like staring at me, but I think one of the things I might do, because a lot of the patterns I've knit lately with drops, I've ended up with like 2 or 3 extra balls when I'm done. Like I order too much, which I go based on yardage for the size, and I don't knit super tight, but I guess I'm ordering a little bit too much, which I'd rather have too much than not enough. I'd rather have spent, I don't know, $8 to $10 more on yarn than have to spend $20 shipping it here and wait for a long time. So I might do a colorwork sweater, probably in like a worsted Aran weight colorwork sweater with some of the scraps that I have, because I haven't really done. I mean, I did the Lumi sweater, I did the Halibut sweater. Those are both they're like stranded colorwork. They're not really Fair Isle, and I'd really like to try and knit a Fair Isle sweater, like truly. I do kind of have a hard time holding the yarn well in my hands and keeping it positioned. So I actually I don't like buying knitting trinkets usually because they tend to be a waste, but I did buy the little ring that has the 2 hooks for the different yarn, because part of my problem was like I couldn't keep the 2 separate enough on my fingers. And I'm a continental knitter. I can't really throw. I don't really get it because I started with crocheting, and then continental was more intuitive, switching from crocheting. So I can't really do the throwing and the continental. That's like too much. So I was trying to do it one-handed, both continental, and it was just not working for me. So I think I'm gonna try it with the ring thing, and we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna try it with my brother's sweater, and then we'll see if that works out, and that would hopefully make colorwork in Fair Isle a lot easier. Which I'm also really excited for his sweater because it's steeked. The armholes are steeked, and the front slit is steeked. It's also bottom up, which I'm sure will be miserable, but like at least it's colorwork the whole time, so hopefully it'll be interesting. What was I gonna say? Oh, it is superwash though. I'm using Drops Charisma, which steeking that should be interesting, but it's DK, and I went back and forth on the yarn a lot. The recommended yarn for the pattern is Drops Charisma, but I was like, I don't really want to use superwash just because of the steeking. It'd be easier to felt it with a wool yarn, but I think the just wool non-superwash was kind of expensive. Drops Charisma is superwash, right? I thought it was. Maybe it's not. I thought it was. I'd considered doing Drops Lima, but then I was like, I'm knitting in this nice, really fancy sweater. Do I want it to have an alpaca blend? Like, is that really the best thing for that? I would have used almost the same colors I used for Ben's Halibut sweater, the indigo blue and probably the white, not the gray. But the sale for that went away, and they had run out of the indigo blue, and I didn't like the navy. I didn't want to do the navy. I think maybe I just got him the dark blue in the Drops Charisma, not the navy. Kind of a thing against navy. I like it to be a little darker, a little more of a gray tone. Um, but yeah, so that'll be an experiment for sure. I think it'll take me a long time. I told them this year that their Christmas present was me knitting them a sweater, but not to expect it till next Christmas. So his probably will take that long. This one for my mom hopefully won't. But it's a cardigan. She can wear it. She can wear it more in other seasons. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. It's my rambling. What else have I been thinking about? I don't know. I just have a lot of scrap yarn I feel like I need to deal with. Um, Not super small scraps. I don't know. I just have all this stuff I've collected from unraveling things, and I had the base of all my yarn was given to me by an older relative, and I just had buckets. And I've actually donated or given away quite a bit of it. The stuff that I just knew I was never going to use, the stuff that was more acrylic based that I now at this point in my knitting I'm probably not going to use. I would use it for like a crochet blanket or something like that, definitely, but I don't really see one of those in my near future. So like my other brother, his girlfriend knits and crochets too. So I gave her some of that because she's in college. Which also I haven't planned a sweater for him because I feel like she would probably rather make it. I've thought about maybe I might offer to like buy her the yarn to knit him a sweater or something like that, or in pick a pattern. Um, he's he's a little rougher on stuff though. He's not as much of a fashionista as my younger brother. Not that my younger brother's a fashionista. He likes to look nice. He's maybe a little no, he's not a hipster, but I don't know. He's funny. He's learning to. He's in school for welding, but then he still wears like a nice vintage sweater. So he's a funny guy. But my other brother's a lot harder on his stuff and not as fashion appreciative, I guess. Um, he tends to wear silly things, but he might like a plain sweater or something like that. So I'll have to talk to her about that at some point. But I don't know. These body rows are definitely going to take me a while. I've been reading a Brandon Sanderson book, and luckily I'm enjoying it, so I'm not really noticing the knitting too much. But this is definitely, I feel like I've been talking for a while, and this is my third row. This is my second purl row. So I did a purl row, a knit row, and now I'm on a purl row again. Not that it matters too much. I can still feel, I can feel the knitting, so I don't need to look at the purls. I don't know. I don't like knitting bodies. I would knit sleeves all day instead of knitting a body of a sweater or a cardigan. Especially cardigans always take forever because it's flat knitting. I should I actually thought about like what if I just joined it in the round and knit it in the round and then steeked it? Like what's the big deal? What's the big deal? We should do that more. We should do that more. I mean, I started felting the ends of my yarn together, and that was when I was like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. Why do we not just felt things for everything to make it easier? Um, now I'm thinking again about steeking this. I'm not going to do it, but I really would like to. Maybe I should, that's what I should start designing. Just regular plain cardigans even if you worked down the v-neck, even if you worked down through and it was like a button cardigan with a v-neck, even if you worked the yoke flat and then joined it and did the rest of it in the round, that would be so much easier. And steeking that, like you could do any cardigan like that. I think maybe I should experiment with that and write a pattern. Maybe that's my calling. Do a how to turn any cardigan into a steeped cardigan as someone who has never steeped a cardigan. Yeah. I do also still have a bunch of like superwash fingering weight yarn because I had found a really nice that's like hand dyed. I'd found a nice little cardigan in superwash hand dyed yarn in a really nice like foggy blue that had some holes in it, and the buttons were really ugly. So I unraveled it because someone had donated it and it had holes in it. And I thought about keeping it the way that it was, but I was like, no, I think a better use of this would be taking the yarn and making something else with it, but I haven't figured out what to make yet. I can never decide. It's a big investment of time, a fingering weight sweater or something like that. So I haven't decided because I have a few others that I've thrifted, like one-off skeins of, that I think I could make a nice colorwork sweater. I feel like the hand-dyed pattern world and the like fingering weight sweater world is kind of almost an entirely different community. Like there's like a whole different strain of people, not type of people, just like that's what they do. Like I think of Nitty Natty. She knits like almost exclusively, it seems like, with hand dyed superwash type yarns. And I think it's beautiful and it's amazing. But a lot of people I follow more are into rustic yarns and like a little bit heavier weights. Some of them do lighter weight things, but that's what I tend to see all the time. I feel like people are usually in one camp or the other, and maybe like there's going to be a little overlap, but just not a ton. So you don't see a ton of people who do a lot of both. At least the people I follow. Um, I'm sure there's an exception. There's always an exception to the rule, but I don't know. It's just kind of I feel like I don't see those patterns as much, though I'm sure they're out there. And I've tried to do like a deep search on Ravelry, but it can be kind of hard. I not that I don't trust small designers. It's hard. I feel like I need someone to vouch for a pattern sometimes or a new designer. Um, just because I get nervous. I'm like, oh, is this gonna be? Am I gonna understand this? Am I gonna spend the money on the pattern and the yarn and then get like really confused because I don't understand the writing style? But if someone that I follow and I've like listened to their recommendations before, if they recommend it, then I'm like, oh, if they understand it, then I think I can understand it. Like I think we're at a similar skill level, so it'll make sense to me. Um, I don't know, it's like anything. Like I kind of wish there were. I mean, you can look at the projects on Ravelry and see what people have to say, and there are ratings, but I don't know. I feel like maybe a better rating system would be good to understand. But yeah, I'm almost done with my third row. Almost done. It's definitely been a little while. This takes me a while. I'm kind of time blind to how long things take me. One of my best friends, or my best friend, we've known each other since we were kids, been friends since we were kids, and then we roomed together for, I guess, technically 2.5, but I'd consider it like 3 years in college. Um, she was an art major. We're both very arts and craftsy, obviously. And she was like, I watched one of your videos and you knit a sweater at like X amount of time. How did you do that? I was like, well, one, I'm a crazy person. Two, I'm like totally time blind to what I do, especially if I'm watching a show or I'm reading a book. I feel like once you realize that you're capable of creating something this big or with this much work, like once you've knit one, oh, fire truck. Once you've knit one DK weight sweater and you've finished it, you're like, oh, I can do that. So I can do that again. Like if I start it, I will finish it. I can finish it because I have finished it before. When you haven't finished, this is my like, doing a whole video about my like tricking my brain into how I trick my brain to finish things or knit. But once I've finished it once, finished something like that once, I'm like, oh, totally capable of that. Like once I've knit like a men's size large sweater, I'm like, oh, I can totally knit bigger sizes there for people. I finished that. So I know I have the ability to finish another thing like that. So then that's how I trick myself. But yeah, that's how things have been rolling lately. Um, not a whole lot going on, vibing, knitting, reading, looking for jobs sometimes, but mostly knitting, reading. um, I have some more video ideas in the pipeline, so I hope you enjoyed this time knitting with me and chatting with me. I hope you found my very chaotic, unplanned train of thought interesting in some way. I probably should have organized it better, but I'm just here to vibe. I'm just here to sit and to vibe, and that's what's fun sometimes. So I'm gonna keep working on this Eva cardigan off camera, and hopefully in my next pod, I've gotten through this ball of yarn for the body and maybe started a sleeve or two. We'll see. I probably will. I've been in the zone lately, but I hope you're having a great day. It's Valentine's Day for me today, but it won't be when you see this, I don't think. Maybe. Uh, so I hope you had a great Valentine's Day. I hope someone told you that they love you. If they didn't, I love you, and I hope you're having a great day. Um, and I hope you're having a great time knitting, whatever you're knitting.